You already know where the engine is on a car. You know where it is on a truck. But on the vehicle that moves more people through American cities than anything else, you probably never thought to check. The answer isn't where instinct puts it, and the reason why changes how you see every bus you'll ever board. Why did buses change? The first motor buses weren't designed by transit engineers. They were built by truck manufacturers who did the obvious thing. They took a truck, stretched it, and started charging passengers. The engine sat up front behind the driver, the radiator faced forward, and the whole layout was borrowed directly from commercial freight vehicles. That worked well enough through the 1920s and 1930s. But by the late 1940s, American cities were growing fast. Ridership was climbing, routes were getting busier, and the limitations of a truck-based design started showing up everywhere, not gradually, but all at once on the same routes, in the same cities, at the same time. Transit agencies didn't just want a better bus, they needed one that could run the same route 50 times a day, survive 12 to 15 years of constant use, and carry standing passengers through tight city traffic without breaking down or breaking people. The truck layout wasn't built for that job. Something had to be rebuilt from scratch. What was wrong? Up front. Here's what riding an early city bus actually felt like from the inside. The engine sat right up front, wedged behind the driver with nowhere else to go. And because metal doesn't disappear just because you need the space, it pushed straight up through the floor of the passenger cabin as a wide, solid hump running down the middle of the aisle. The very spot where you needed to walk was the spot the engine had already claimed. For most riders, it was an inconvenience. For elderly passengers and anyone with mobility difficulties, it was a genuine obstacle, a raised step appearing exactly where the floor should have been flat right after you boarded. In a normal commute, you'd climb over it and find your seat. With a heavy engine anchored at the front and a full load of passengers sitting toward the rear, the weight across the vehicle was badly out of balance, like carrying a backpack with everything shoved into one side. The front axle absorbed far more than its designed share of the load, and in cities where the same routes ran dozens of buses every single day, that constant imbalance added up fast. Roads wore down sooner. Vehicles needed repairs earlier. The front axle was working twice as hard as it should have been, and as long as the engine stayed up front, there was no way to fix that without changing something far more fundamental. How did the move work? Moving the engine to the back sounds simple when you say it out loud. But the moment engineers actually tried to do it, they ran into a problem nobody had fully thought through. The engine couldn't just slide backward and stand in the rear the same way it stood up front. The compartment at the back of the bus was too low, too tight, and too enclosed to fit an upright engine. So engineers had to tip the entire thing onto its side, mounting the diesel engine horizontally, lying flat, the way you'd rotate a piece of furniture to get it through a narrow doorway. The engine itself didn't change, but the way it sat inside the vehicle was completely new, and that one decision rippled outward into almost every other system connected to it. The drivetrain had to be redesigned to work with an engine lying on its side instead of standing upright. The cooling system had no choice but to relocate entirely. With the engine sealed inside a rear compartment, radiators moved up to the roof or the rear exterior of the bus, pulling fresh air through vents and pushing heat out away from the passenger cabin. None of these were small adjustments. Each one required its own round of testing, failure, and refinement, and it took years before the whole system worked reliably together. But when it did, the reward showed up immediately in the one place every passenger touches the moment they board: the floor. With the engine no longer occupying the space beneath the cabin, the entire floor could drop down and stay completely flat from front to back. Modern city buses sit roughly 12 to 14 inches off the ground at the front entrance, low enough that a simple fold-out ramp handles wheelchair access without any mechanical lift required. That floor feels unremarkable precisely because it works so well. It's not a stylistic choice or a comfort upgrade. It's what the floor looks like when the engine finally has somewhere else to be. So now you know how engineers physically moved the engine, laid flat, cooling pushed to the roof, floor dropped to the ground. but moving the engine was only half the problem. What it actually fixed and what it quietly broke is a different story entirely. What did the move fix? Once the engine moved to the back, three things got better almost immediately, and each one made the others work better too. The first was weight. With the engine sitting at the rear and passengers spread across the cabin, the load finally balanced out between the front and rear axles the way it was supposed to. Federal regulations cap how much weight a single axle can carry at 20,000 pounds, and when the weight distributes evenly, buses can carry a full load of passengers without any single axle getting pushed past its limit. More people, same vehicle, no violations. The second was maintenance. On a modern transit bus, the entire rear panel swings open like a wide door, giving mechanics direct access to the engine and everything connected to it. No need to touch anything inside the cabin. On the old front engine design, reaching the engine often meant dismantling part of the driver's area just to get to what needed fixing. Moving the engine backward made it, paradoxically, much easier to reach. The third improvement was the one that quietly mattered most: driver safety. With the engine no longer sitting directly in front of the driver, there was now real distance between the driver's seat and the front of the vehicle. In a head-on collision, that distance is what absorbs the impact before it reaches a person. The one thing that got harder was heat. A rear engine enclosed in a tight compartment traps warmth in a way a front engine never did, and transit agencies in hot cities like Phoenix and Miami manage cooling far more carefully than those in cooler climates. Every fix creates something new to solve. The goal is just making sure the new problem is smaller than the one you started with. Where else does this appear? Now think about how this engineering shows up all around us, and you'll see just how familiar it really is. Putting the engine in the back didn't just stay on city transit buses rolling down Broadway in New York. That same engineering logic spread outward, but it landed differently depending on the vehicle's job. Those classic yellow Bluebird school buses dropping you off on Elm Street kept a front engine layout for a good reason. Their routes run at lower speeds, and a perfectly flat floor isn't essential when students are safely sitting, not standing. The trade-offs calculate differently when the mission changes. However, big Greyhound motor coaches cruising down Route 66 put their engines in the back decades ago. This rear engine layout raised the passenger cabin, creating massive luggage bays for suitcases. A city bus accessibility fix became a major long-distance travel perk. Finally, look at sports cars like the Ferrari 308s. The same weight balance engineers used for heavy buses is what designers use to push weight toward the central rod connecting the back wheels to improve handling. What comes after engines? Electric buses are changing the game in a way nobody fully anticipated. Without a combustion engine to worry about, the whole question of where to put it simply disappears. The floor stays flat automatically, and the motor tucks neatly into the axle without taking up any cabin space at all. But that doesn't mean the hard work is over. The battery pack that powers everything is heavy, and figuring out where to place it without throwing the weight balance off is now the puzzle engineers are working through. By 2024, electric buses made up around 10% of new bus orders across the US, and that number keeps climbing. The specific problem that started this whole story, or where to put the engine, is fading away. But the deeper challenge underneath it, managing weight, space, and reliability inside a vehicle that has to perform every single day without fail, that part isn't going anywhere. If there's something you walk past every day and wonder about, drop it in the comments. We read every single one, and the best suggestions make it into future videos. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.